Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation, and welcome to a slightly later edition of the Spartan Nation Podcast here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co-host, Aiden McCrone. Just going to give an update here on the latest with Michigan State Athletics. Most notably, February signing day for the football team started today. The signing period started today. And then just kind of an outlook on Michigan State basketball after a win over Maryland over the weekend, but a loss to Minnesota last night. I'm going to get into all of that tonight on the show. But we're actually going to start a little bit differently today. And this is just something that kind of came to mind as I was kind of preparing the show prep. Just wanted to give like a little shout out to some of the other programs for Michigan State who are having, really solid seasons, but don't get the same level of attention that the football program and the men's basketball program too. So just briefly going to touch on those real quickly, starting with Michigan State women's basketball, who's off to a 17-5 start this season. And they're 7-4 in the Big Ten. That's good enough for fourth place right now. They're 3 games back of Iowa, who obviously is very talented with Caitlin Clark and things like that. But a really good season for Michigan State women's basketball. I think in a new head coach's first year, Robin, the last name is escaping me at the moment. Freilich, her first year, I think, with the program. So the program is definitely trending up. So give a shout out to them. Michigan State's men's hockey team is also having a very good year. They're 18-7-3 overall, 12-4-2 in the Big Ten. They're in first place in the Big Ten standings right now. And those 12 conference wins in the regular season is actually a program record. So again, a fresh coach in Adam Nightingale. I think his second year with the program, and they're also trending very highly up. And looking forward to seeing what they can do as the season kind of progresses here. They play Michigan again this weekend. They split with the Wolverines a couple weekends ago, so something to watch for. And as we get into the Big Ten tournament and onto nationals, I think they'll be a team to watch. And then just finally, women's gymnastic team. They're tied for first in the Big Ten as well right now, and ranked number 10 nationally. They just had a match over in Ann Arbor and beat Michigan in that too. So again, just want to give a little brief shout out to those programs who are performing very well. Again, the women's gymnastic team ranked number 10 in the country. Hockey team is ranked number 9 in the country. And the women's basketball team is receiving votes as well in the national polls. So again, just want to give a shout out to them. Michigan State has also, I think, started to launch a new NIL program after the we'll call it what it was. It was debacle, the SD4L debacle during the football season. They've kind of rebranded the NIL collective, and there's some positive momentum on that front as well for Michigan State. So outlook looks good for the athletic department as a whole, and we'll keep an eye on those programs as we continue forward. With that, we're going to kind of dig into football a little bit here, who had a second signing day today, the February signing period. Michigan State added a couple of 2024 prospects to their class. And so let's dig into that a little bit here, Aiden. 2 kids signed today. One was Mike Sean Beeler from Chicago. He's a 3-star kid who just committed to the program, I want to say 2-3 days ago. He's not ranked very high as far as like the national rankings, but the kid has 33 scholarship offers from a variety of programs. I know Oregon was involved, Colorado, Texas A&M. So some of these bigger programs, a lot of scholarship offers. So this is a kid who is ranked in the 900s nationally, but has garnered a lot of interest from around the country. And that indicates to me that he's an overlooked prospect, a guy who can potentially develop into a difference maker at this level, given just the amount of attention that he got. So we'll start with him. Aiden, your thoughts on this signee and what his potential could be in East Lansing.
Yeah, and to add to that, just the fact that he's from the Midwest, he's from Chicago, went to Simeon High School. So I think that's another plus, just kind of laying the groundwork right now, getting those Midwestern ties. I think every single one of the new staffers has done a great job, trying to at least build those ties. And, every single one of the staffers has, I think, locked in a commitment from a Midwestern player. So I think that's a big thing. And like you said, you look at his offer list, and it doesn't really match up with kind of his prospect rating. So I think, the offers, were definitely there, and, there was definitely a lot of interest from some big name programs. So I think that just shows kind of what player MSU is getting. And he's gonna be an interior lineman, but he looks like he could be fast enough to be, on the edge at some points, but I do think he's gonna play. We'll see. Honestly, we'll see what kind of role he is in Joe Rossi's new defense, because that is a three front defense. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, for sure. And then the second guy they signed today was a guy we talked about a little bit. I'm not sure if it was the last show or the previous one, but Jalen Brown. He's a 3-star wide receiver out of Texas. A kid who had a lot of production last year. I think he had over 900 yards receiving last year, 11 touchdowns as a senior. They go down into Texas and pluck that kid who's kind of an overlooked guy. Unlike the Beeler kid from Chicago, not a whole lot of offers for this kid, but again, productive as a high school senior. And I found it interesting that again, he's a mid-tier or mid to lower tier 3-star kid on the composite rankings that takes him 24/7 Sports, On 3, Rivals, ESPN, like all of those mixed in. He's a lower level 3-star kid, but what I find interesting about him is 24/7 specifically their rankings. They've jumped him a lot over the last week, and they consider him actually Michigan State's third highest ranked prospect of their 2024 class. So kind of a skyrocket jump for him in 24/7's rankings. We talked about him a little bit, Aiden, but any other thoughts about his kind of meteoric rise over the last week?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State kind of seems like they're taking a chance on him. MSU was his only FBS offer, if I remember correctly. So, MSU is really taking a shot on him, and then, his rating, shoots up in 24/7. And I'd say of all the recruiting sites that I follow, I probably trust 24/7 the most. So
I agree.
Maybe that's a little bit of a comfort for some people, based on the recruiting sites that they follow. So I think that's a huge thing. And, they're going to take chances. I think that's what this staff has shown, is that they're going to take swings on guys that, have high risk, high reward, but, they're willing to take those chances because they believe in the development, and, the coaching staff, they really believe in each other. So, bringing in a prospect like this, maybe raise some eyebrows from the outside, but I think from the inside they feel comfortable knowing what they're doing. So yeah, I think that's, something to look forward to. And, obviously the from what we saw last year, MSU's wide receiver room is kind of, unestablished. I don't think there's anyone who really stepped up and separated themselves from the rest of them. So I think, any receiver that comes in has an opportunity to play right away.
For sure. And, we're only getting like a snapshot of Jonathan Smith and his staff's kind of approach to recruiting right now. I mean, he was hired in late November. He's adding staff, through December as, the first signing day is approaching. And so like we're not getting a full picture of what Michigan State football recruiting is going to look like under this new staff. But one thing I do like about what I've seen so far is that this staff is definitely willing to take some flyers out on some kids. I think one of the problems with the previous staff was they had very grand designs on getting these 5 stars and 4 stars to come visit East Lansing, but and they landed quite a few 4 stars. The previous staff did. But when they didn't get a guy who they really wanted, who was, a higher rated kid, they did not have a backup plan in a lot of cases. And so that's one thing that is very different about the new staff so far, is that, hey, we'll take a flyer out on a kid. We're going to trust our own ability to develop talent. And so just a kind of a difference there and something to look forward to. And this is what, Jonathan Smith was successful with at Oregon State. You're not going to out-recruit Oregon. You're not going to out-recruit USC and maybe even Washington. So he kind of made it his specialty of taking overlooked guys and developing them and turning Oregon State into contender. That does sound a lot like what Mark D'Antonio was able to do at Michigan State during his tenure. Again, we're not going to compare Jonathan Smith to Mark D'Antonio, but just the formula is similar. And so I'm anxious to see what that looks like as, especially next year's the 2025 recruiting class when they have a full cycle to really dig into things. Anxious to see what that looks like going into next year. Final active business, I guess, with the Michigan State signing day is 3-star linebacker Jaden Walker from Portage, Michigan. He was committed to Michigan State. He actually committed in early September while the previous staff was still in East Lansing. In fact, I don't think Mel Tucker had been even suspended yet when Walker committed to Michigan State. He held his commitment through the tumultuous season with Tucker getting fired and all of that, stayed committed to that staff. But when the December signing day came around, he chose not to sign at that time. He had started to gain interest from USC. And during the first day of the second signing period, he did flip and signed with the Trojans. So Michigan State loses the guy there. Again, there's another 3-star kid. I don't have his rankings in front of me other than the star rating. But your thoughts on this battle? It did seem to be trending this way over the last couple weeks to month or so.
Yeah, I mean, just his whole recruiting process, he really shot up. The last 5 months he was committed to Toledo before he flipped to MSU in September. And then, now he's off to USC in February. So I think, he shot up. A lot of people liked him. A lot of coaches liked him. And yeah, just the way that he plays, they thought, the previous staff thought his versatility was really a huge asset because he is kind of a linebacker he's not super huge yet. So he could be kind of a sideline to sideline guy, or he could be, a safety or a nickel, depending on kind of what package you want to put in there. So overall, he's a really good player if you watch him. But yeah, I think there wasn't really a ton of contact between MSU or Walker and MSU, or kind of any interest after the whole new staff came in. So yeah, and USC is started to do a good job. I know Walker isn't the only kid from Michigan that USC's gotten in this recruiting cycle. So they're trying to come into the Midwest, joining the Big Ten. So that's huge for USC, but also a key loss for MSU as well. But yeah, like you said, we kind of saw this coming since he didn't sign in December.
Yeah, I do think the fact that he was committed to the previous staff, and then there's the shakeup. He did take an official visit to Michigan State. I want to say on December 9th or somewhere around there, that weekend anyway. And that was after Smith was hired, and so that was kind of his introduction to the new staff. But again, USC had kind of started to gain some momentum. And to your point, I'm not sure. And this is, when I say I'm not sure, that's what I mean. I'm not sure how interested the new staff was in Jaden Walker, where Lincoln Riley and the USC staff might have put on a little bit more of a full court press to try to flip him. That could be the case. You've got Southern California, all that to factor in as well, just the weather and all those things. Again, I don't know if that was a factor in his decision, but regardless, Michigan State, this isn't certainly isn't a back-breaking flip or anything like that, but just wanted to acknowledge it on the show. And with that, that's kind of what we have on signing day. I don't have anything to add. Again, it's the December signing period is now where the vast majority of recruits sign with their programs. At this point, we'll be looking forward to spring practice, which will get started in the middle of March. One last little note on Michigan State football. They lost a game against Louisiana on their schedule earlier this offseason. I can't remember who Louisiana is playing instead of Michigan State, but they had an opening. Today they revealed the full schedule today, and they've replaced that game against Louisiana with Prairie View A&M, which is an FCS program. That's a bye game if I've ever seen one, but that fills out Michigan State's full 12-game schedule. They'll welcome an FCS program in week 2 to Spartan Stadium, and obviously that's a game that we expect Michigan State to win and add to that win total and try to get back to bowl contention. So just a little programming note there. With that, if you have anything to add on football, if not, we'll move on to basketball.
No, we can move on to what we saw last night.
Sure. So a disappointing outcome for Michigan State men's basketball last night. Going into the game against Minnesota, they had won 5 of 6 games. Looked like they were starting to get a little momentum. We talked about this, that the schedule lightened up a little bit, and we thought they would start to stack some wins. They did do that going into last night. They defeated Maryland 63-54 on Saturday in a very it was a grinding game. It wasn't a pretty game. It was definitely old school Big Ten basketball, but Michigan State found a way to win. And I don't know if it's ironic or not, but Izzo kind of praised the toughness of his team after that win. He acknowledged that it was ugly, but enjoyed the fact that they kind of gritted one out and found a way to win. Then you go into Minnesota. Have an up and down first half, but you end the first half on I think a 19-7 run. Increase your lead to 9 points early in the second half, and then Tyson Walker goes down with re-aggravating that groin injury that we've heard from Tom Izzo has been nagging him in recent weeks, and the wheels kind of fell off with Walker not on the floor. Minnesota goes on a 7-0 run without him. Walker comes back. They increase it to a 10-0 run. Now it's a dogfight. And the Gophers made a few more plays down the stretch than Michigan State did. So a disappointing night for sure. It looked like Michigan State was on its way to getting another Big Ten road victory, which is difficult, but something that this program is used to being able to do. And instead, you've got kind of a gut wrenching defeat. Your reaction?
I've said this multiple times. I think for sure the last podcast, if not the last 2, about MSU really needs to win every single game in February. And, after this, it really is concerning. I think my level of concern is kind of back to where it was towards the beginning of the season with this team. And I think, it comes down to, I know Chris said in the comments that the senior leadership, I think it comes down to that. We can talk about the Maryland game first. I mean, there is no reason MSU should have struggled in that game, in my opinion, because, Julian Reese was in foul trouble essentially the whole game. He sat on the bench pretty much the whole time. And, Jameer Young was doing it all by himself, and MSU still kind of got by barely. So I think MSU that I know Izzo credited the toughness, but that shouldn't have been as close as it had to be. And then, fast forward to last night where MSU has the lead. And I think the biggest thing that stuck out for me at least was at the end of the game, and Jaden Akins seemed like he didn't touch the ball the last 5 minutes, I feel like.
And he shot the ball well.
And I think he had 16 last night and was 4 for 7 from 3. And I just didn't see it. Felt like he was invisible out there the last 5 minutes. So I think, it does come down to the senior leadership and the guard play, because it's, the guards are MSU's biggest strength, but also, they've been exposed a lot this year too, especially, the last few games, and to put a cherry on top, Cam Christie was the culprit of Minnesota's success. And, that I think that's just kind of, it just is kind of funny to me. But I think, they can still win against Illinois. I wouldn't bet on it. But that's really a game right there where, leading up to it, you're thinking, okay, if they lose it, it's not too bad. But now after you drop a game against, Minnesota, now you're thinking, okay, this is a must-win game before heading into March, because, The schedule did get easier, but you really can't drop any games now with 9
Yeah,
losses. So
one of the things about the schedule getting easier, and it's great to stack wins and get some momentum going, but you're not boosting your resume by winning those games. And so
yeah.
we've shared on this show that we think Michigan State is safely in the field right now, and I would be stunned if they don't make the field. I think that's fair to say from where I'm sitting right now. Yeah, there's still some work to do. You can't go 0-8 down the stretch or anything like that, but like I would be shocked if they don't make the field at this point. But man, definitely a game when you're up by 9 on the road against a Big Ten opponent, and Michigan State was in control too before that injury to Tyson. So to kind of watch all of that disappear in the last 15 minutes or so or whatever it was, it was a gut punch. That's the way that's how I would describe it. Izzo referenced the toughness of his team with Maryland. We've talked about what we think of that a little bit then, but then the very next game when you really need to have that grittiness and that toughness when your leading scorer goes out, it's not there, and that's disappointing for a team that is this filled with upperclassmen. You think about Malik Hall is a 5th-year senior. Tyson was a little banged up down the stretch, so maybe he's exempt a little bit for this specific game. But then AJ Hoggard is a senior. Jaden Akins is a junior. Like, these are guys who've been here for a long time, and so that's definitely disappointing for the fan base to see that occur in a game like that, which could have really been another confidence booster to go get that win on the road, and all those things. Yeah, Chris is talking about the free throws again. Let's talk about the free throws. 7 for 17, unacceptable for a college basketball program. Malik Hall, we've really sung the praises of Malik Hall over the last several weeks, and one performance does not diminish everything he's done over the last few weeks. And I don't even think he was all that bad in the game against Minnesota. It was just that you go 1 for 6 from the free throw line, and you let a guy who was averaging, I think, 3 points a game. I can't remember his first name. His last name was Fox. You let him kind of go off early in the game. That's disappointing too. So not Malik's best effort. I don't think, again, it doesn't take away from what he's done over the last few weeks, but then that's another leader. I was not at the game. It was over in Minnesota. I'm able to attend all the home games, but road games I can't get to, other than the one coming up in Michigan, at Michigan, in a couple weekends. But from what I've seen with the post game and on Twitter and video and things like that, Izzo was pretty angry after the game, understandably. And it sounded like he was kind of undertoned. He didn't come out and say it, but it sounded like a lot of his frustration was kind of aimed towards AJ Hoggard, which, again, this is nothing new, that the two of them have butted heads, throughout the last 4 years. We've talked about AJ too. I'm kind of rambling here, but we've talked about AJ quite a bit. But to kind of put a finer point on it, and this is, I'm gonna leave it to the comment section to join me or to shoot me down here. But like, this is a tough question, but is the Michigan State fan base kind of ready to move on from AJ Hoggard? Like, is the fan base ready to get Jeremy Fears back healthy again and to move on with a new guy running the show? Is that too harsh, or am I on the right track here?
No, I think it's just, I think with this whole team, it's consistency. I think everyone, I don't think it's a single player, because I feel like you can point at every single player. I would say the only ones who I wouldn't say, who are kind of the exception are, I would say, Tyson Walker. I think he still plays hard. I know he has his ups and downs, but playing, even in the first half before the groin injury, he had that one, he went up for a layup and got fouled hard and came down on his wrist. Yeah. And you could tell that was, irritating him for most of the game. So, I mean, I think Walker really plays hard. I think Akins plays hard, but sometimes he just is absent. Like, you don't see him out there. with the ball. I think that goes back to Izzo schematically. I think that's something where you look at how well Akins has played and you say, how
Yeah,
can I get him the ball more? Because sometimes it feels like he's non-existent. So I don't think it's any one player. I think it's more of
that's fair.
this team as a whole has just um yeah, I mean, if I had to describe it, I would say that, they're getting they seem soft, I think, in a way. And I feel like a lot of people would say that is just the soft, kind of how soft this team has seemed to be, because every time they come back and have kind of a statement win, or go on a streak, they blow up, they implode, and you have a game like this where I thought, offensively they were playing pretty well, and then defensively they fell apart at the end. And it was kind of the same story a couple of weeks ago. Again, and it was kind of a similar story against Maryland, where it's just like it's a tale of two halves. You get kind of two different MSU teams this whole season. You get the team that comes out on fire and is distributing the ball well, and doesn't have a lot of turnovers, and then you get the other team who gives up a ton of offensive rebounds and is turning the ball over and making mistakes, making bad passes, and taking some bad shots. So I really don't know the answer or the solution to this, because it seems like my solution seems to be probably play some of the freshmen more. I would say
Yeah.
the bit the front court should be a little bit different, or should look a lot different. But to Izzo, obviously he doesn't see it that way.
Sure.
And kind of not letting Akins be a ball handler. So there's a lot wrong. And I think right now it starts with just kind of Izzo, and kind of the identity of his previous teams do not seem to be the identity of this team.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Um, just a couple reactions to what you had to say there. Never in my lifetime did I think a Michigan State team or an Izzo coach team could be labeled soft. Like
Mhm.
that's so
Mhm.
counter to everything this program was built on. Um, I wasn't alive for, well, I mean, I was alive for the very, very end of the Judd Heathcote era, but I'm not conscious enough to be able to watch basketball back then. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it was like under Heathcote. I can imagine it was still pretty blue collar, just because that was Izzo's mentor. But again, I never thought I would hear anyone utter those words about a Michigan State team. Um, and so that's striking, and it makes you question, some of the what's going on with the coaching staff. Like again, I'm just speculating here, but like, what is missing? Like, what's the element that's missing that's been gone since the COVID year, the year
Mhm.
that Michigan State was on its way to being a number one seed and was up there with the best of them as far as teams who were national championship contenders. Unfortunately, COVID happens and that tournament gets wiped out. Um, and since that time, like this has not been the same program, and I'm not sure what happened there, other than the fact you lose Cassius Winston, you lose Xavier Tillman, who were just pillars of the program. um, and Michigan State has not been able to replace that that level of leadership on the team, and frankly the skill level as well as of those two guys. So yeah, just surprised by that, but I don't disagree with you. Secondly, I want to talk about a little bit about Booker, because against Maryland, I kind of understood maybe keeping him on the bench, just because Maryland has very physical bigs. To your point, Julian Reese was off the court for the majority of the game. You're right,
Mhm.
and so
Mhm.
maybe that goes against the argument I'm making right now. But like, with as physical as Maryland was in the post, not surprised that he didn't enter the game at all. He played 3 minutes against Minnesota, and didn't do a whole lot. But what can you do in 3 minutes? But even in like
Right.
that stint that he had, I thought he looked good. He was moving well.
Mhm.
He does space the floor a little bit because you've got to respect his jump shot. So yeah, that's something that we've talked about a lot on this show. And but the philosophy continues to be what it is. I did think as far as Cohen, again, he only played like 5 or 6 minutes against Minnesota, so it's hard to judge a player based on such a small window. But he did seem a little bit out of sorts, a little bit, just maybe not comfortable. There was one play where somebody picked up their dribble and couldn't find it. Maybe it was Walker, and he didn't make a nice cut to the middle. Got it, drew a foul, missed both free throws, unfortunately. But so there was that one play. That's the only thing that jumps out because he was in there for such a short time. But just watching him a little bit, he did seem a little bit unsure, uncomfortable. So again, maybe that's part of it. But yeah, unfortunately, this team has not come together the way you and I anticipated it at all. Going back to the offseason, the way we looked at this team, shoot, they were my preseason pick to win the Big Ten. They're 6-6 in the Big Ten. They're nowhere close to being at the level of Purdue. They're not at the level of Illinois and Wisconsin right now. We'll see how this game on Saturday goes. But yeah, they're just not there right now. And for the fourth year in a row to not be a Big Ten contender is unacceptable for this program.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now they're fighting for another bye in the Big Ten tournament. They're just fighting for a bye game, and yeah, just everything you touched on. I think there doesn't seem to be a direction. I think MSU has always been kind of a physical team that has prided themselves on defense a lot, and found like a scorer to really lead the charge. And, I think they found that with Walker and Akins, but defensively, there's a lot of breakdowns. And, metrics wise, you look at, the KenPom ratings and you're like, okay, well, they're not too bad in the defensive ratings. But when you actually sit down and watch the games, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is bad. Like there are stretches in every game where it's like there's just breakdown after breakdown, and one turns into two and two turns into a 10-0 run, and it just seems like looking at the KenPom and the advanced metrics ratings, it's like if you watch the games, they look nothing alike, and I think that's the big thing. So I think if MSU, I think they with the ball in the right hands, with Walker and Akins, and the way that Hogard can distribute when he's at his best, and the way that Malik Hall can make some of those turnaround shots when he's at his best, and you have guys like Cohen Carr who can be like super athletic, and you have Booker who can space the floor. I think you really need to just go like all out on offense. I think, you look at Wisconsin and how they've completely changed their identity this year, where, everyone's always known Wisconsin as, a 40-38, battle that's, slow as molasses. And then, this year it's like they're one of the best offensive teams in the country. And I think that's MSU. It's just, if you're going to pick a direction, I think just going an all out offensive team, and just sticking with it. I think that's the move they need to make. And a lot, I see in the comments talking about the rebounding, and I think the rebounding was a problem, and I think we knew about it. I didn't think it was going to be this bad. You talk about kind of the upperclassmen, and Madi Sissoko is another one of those guys, and you have Cooper and Kohler as well, who are still underclassmen, but those are the three guys, and you have to stick with them, no matter what. So it's kind of figuring out what you want to do with that. So just developing the front court has been a struggle since like you said, like post COVID, it's been a catastrophe. So that's kind of what I gotta say.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think this is a decent point from Keys to Wisdom as well. Am I just misremembering things, or is AJ much worse at finishing around the basket this year than even like last year? I thought he was, one of the better finishers around the rim maybe in the Big Ten going back to last year.
Yeah.
But he has really struggled. I don't know if it's, we talked about this early in the year, but I don't know if it's the fact that Joey Hauser is not on the floor to stretch out the defense a little bit, but he's not able to make the same impact, getting to the basket this year for whatever reason as in years past. And I think that's kind of taken away his fastball a little bit. That's opened up so much other parts of his game. He's never been a great shooter, certainly not from 3-point range, but even in mid range, coming hit or miss. He's not been good in the mid range this year, and he's not finishing as well around the basket. So again, we're not trying to just dog on AJ in this show or anything like that. But again, you're a fourth year senior. You've been here for a long time. When you play point guard at Michigan State, there is a standard to live up to, and it's a high standard. And we don't apologize for that. You talk about Drew Neitzel, Kalen Lucas, Cassius Winston, Mateen Cleaves. Like it's a laundry list of excellent college point guards, and so unfortunately, fair or not, that's what you're going to be compared to. And so that's kind of I can't say anything else other than that about that situation. So.
Yeah. And I mean, he's up in terms of, statistically, he's up there with the assists, but then you kind of have the other side of that coin where it's like, okay, there's a lot of turnovers, he makes some great plays, but that's half the time. And then the other half the time it's okay. What are we doing here? So
right.
I think,
and I think there's a certain expectation of consistency from that spot with this program, and a certain expectation of maturity and leadership as well. And to your point, there are some nights where AJ absolutely has that. He absolutely is a leader of the team. He absolutely is dialed in and focused, but the inconsistency of it, and that's been the story of this program over the last 4 years, is the inconsistency. And so that's just part of the package deal. Let's look ahead now to what's upcoming for this team, and kind of get a look at the schedule ahead, and we'll kind of finish on that note. I wanted to bring up Keys to Wisdom's comment from earlier in the show, just because this is kind of where we're going here. So Michigan State plays or hosts Illinois on Saturday. That's number 10 team in the country, and then back-to-back road games at Penn State, at Michigan. Those are two of the bottom feeders of the Big Ten. Michigan is last placed. Penn State is below Michigan State. I'll just say that. So again, road games have been difficult for the Spartans this year, but those are games that you have to win those games. I don't think there's any qualms about that. And then back-to-back home games: Iowa, Ohio State, back on the road against Purdue. Mackey has been a house of horrors for Michigan State in recent years. And then a tough game against Northwestern at home, who Michigan State lost to earlier in the year on the road. Northwestern's a good team. And then at Indiana. So how do you see this playing out, Aiden? I know your expectation was that this team should go through February without a loss. That's just kind of sticking to the standard of the program. Like that's what the expectation was. They drop one at Minnesota. You got a tough game coming up against Illinois. So how do you see the last games finishing out, these last 8?
Yeah, I mean, I still have that kind of expectation for them where, after you lose to Minnesota, you still have to win the rest of these in February before Purdue, to really give yourself, a good chance to have, a decent seeding, and then, be able to have, a decent matchup in the Big Ten tournament as well. So I think that's really important. The last 8 games, I still, again, the expectation for me at least would still be to only lose, maybe 2 more. I would say, at Indiana and at Purdue.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. But from what I'm seeing now, at Penn State doesn't seem like a guarantee. Northwestern doesn't seem like a guarantee either. So I don't want to lower my standard to 4-4,
Sure.
but that does seem a little bit more realistic of what it could be, because I think Yeah, they really are just struggling with consistency. And for whatever reason that may be, whether it's, the players, whether it's the coaching, um, that's just been the whole story this season. So if they do go on, a 5-game run and then, lose to Purdue, and then lose, another game after that. So I wouldn't be surprised. And if they lose to Illinois and then they lose to Penn State and then they go win a few and beat Northwestern and at Indiana, it wouldn't be a surprise to me either. So I think,
Sure.
so yeah, I think we'll see. But I would say the expectation would still be to finish, 6-2, 7-1. But realistically, it's looking more at 5-3, 4-4.
Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of distinguish those two things because I don't think Michigan State fans should lower the expectation or the standard of this program. This has been too good of a program for too long to look at a 4-year stretch in which they've not lived up to that and say, well, we got to recalibrate. No, you don't. Like, this is one of the premier basketball programs in the country. As soon as you recalibrate your standard or expectations, you start to lose that. And so I think the fan base should absolutely continue to pound the desk and say, hey, this is not good enough. As JJ says, though, there's no guarantees this year. It's been so up and down. It's hard to know what is going to happen because it has been so inconsistent. But let me just run through the schedule, and this is the way I'm approaching it for now. Based on what we've seen this year, I can't expect. Let me use a different word. I can't anticipate them beating Illinois at home, though I think is very possible. I think you could see, and part of this is Tyson Walker's injury. We haven't talked about that a whole lot tonight.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned. Like, down the stretch in that game, yes, he gutted it out. He scored 6 points. 2 of those were as the clock is expiring. But this is something that's been nagging him for a while, and man, you just can't afford to not have him on the floor. And it seems like at minimum, I would be surprised if he plays the same number of minutes that he's played the majority of the year against Illinois, just because it affected him enough that he had to immediately leave the game. He was hobbling pretty good. He gutted it out, but you could kind of tell that there was some lingering effects for sure. So I don't know what his status is going to be for Saturday, and that's huge. Like, if you don't have Tyson Walker on Saturday, I don't think you can win this game. How much of Tyson will we get? We don't know. So that's part of this, and it's something we've kind of overlooked, not thinking about it. But that's a huge factor going down the stretch as well. Assuming that Tyson can maybe get right by next week. Let's say, he's limited on Saturday a little bit, but by the following week he's back to where he was pre-Minnesota. Let's just assume that for now. So yeah, I would say likely a loss on Saturday would be very disappointing, because that's, again, one of those games where you can add to your resume. You've got to win those games at Penn State and Michigan. I think the home games against Iowa and Ohio State should be W's. That's 4-1. I can't anticipate a win over Purdue. That's 4-2. And then, yeah, those last 2 games are certainly not gimmies. Northwestern's a good team, but kind of the rule is you should defend home court. And so my anticipation would be, go get that win. That's 5-2, and then Indiana, that's a tough one to down the stretch. So anything worse than 5-3 is very disappointing. And even 5-3, again, doesn't meet that standard. So, but that's kind of, as we look ahead, that's kind of where my mind is at. And to JJ's point, 43% from the free throw line, that's not going to get it done down the stretch. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a question for you would be,
okay,
at what, the 8 games left, they're what, 13-9 now, or 14-9.
Yep.
I guess what record would they have to be for you to go, okay, this is concerning? Are they now, on the bubble? Are they one of the first 4 out? Are they not in the tournament? I guess what record is going to, raise that level of concern?
they would probably have to go again. I'm not. I keep an eye on the bracketology stuff, and I'm certainly not an expert.
Mm,
My concern is if you beat Michigan, Penn State, Iowa, and Ohio State, that doesn't really do anything to boost your resume. If
right.
you go 4-4 and your losses are to Illinois, Purdue, Northwestern, and Indiana, you lost to the four best team you played down the stretch, and so that's going to
Mm,
factor into the committee's decision, and then it may come down at that point to what do you do in the Big Ten tournament.
right.
Um, so if those are the four losses, those top four teams that you're playing down the stretch, my concern grows considerably. I still think they get in, but again, you're on the bubble now. So if you win one or two of those games and maybe drop, I don't know, the game at Penn State, um, if Northwestern or Iowa nips you in Breslin, that shouldn't happen. But like again, I think it's
Mm.
it's more about like winning one or two of those four games that are going to help your resume and your analytics and all those things. I think that's what's key.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, if there's if they go 3-5, I think that's really concerning about being on the bubble. And like you said, they're gonna, they might, even if they go 4-4, it might be up to what they do in the Big Ten tournament to get them in. And then even
Yeah,
then, depends on who they play.
sure.
If they're playing, if they have to play Ohio State again, or I think a team like Nebraska could help their resume still. Beating them in the tournament. I mean, pretty much every team that's ahead of them, they're halfway in the Big Ten. So I think, yeah, that's big. I think 4-4 is, yeah, that'll keep you in, but that might get you a
Dicey.
playing game at
Yeah.
that point. You might be in a playing game for that. Um, but yeah, I mean, you look at their resume, Baylor's, really the win that's keeping them in right now, if we're
Yeah.
being honest. And, Indiana State's a good win. Uh, you know, Butler has played well and you kind of play their way to the top of the Big East and kind of working, fighting to get in the tournament. And Pierre Brooks is leading the charge for them there.
Is he?
There's that as well. So, but yeah, I think that's big. I think, a win at Indiana, I think,
Yeah.
analytics wise and like rankings, I think a road win, that's, not Penn State or Michigan. I think, if they go 4-4 and one of their four wins is at Indiana, I think that actually does help them, even if they drop one to Ohio State or Iowa or somebody like that. So, yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of scenarios that we're going to have in our heads for the rest of the season. But I think that's kind of where I'm at. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry about making the tournament yet, but I think after the Penn State game, I think, if they lose that, that's when the level of concern goes way up.
For sure.
And they could be off the bubble. But I think, if they take care of business at Penn State, regardless of the Illinois game, they should be in a safe spot.
Yeah, and part of this is the Big Ten as a men's basketball league is not what it was 5-6 years
Mhm.
ago. It's not. Man, like I remember it's kind of during the Beeline Izzo era where that rivalry was as good as any rivalry in college basketball for a good stretch there. During that time period, Wisconsin was always good. Michigan was good. Michigan State was always good. Purdue was up there. Um, Ohio State was usually pretty good as well. So, I mean, I'm talking like top 15, top 20 programs. Minnesota had a few seasons where they were a top 20 program. So it's still there's still some depth to the league. It's certainly not an easy league to go through, but it's the quality from top to bottom has diminished. Purdue I think is as in as good of a place as they've been as for a program in a long time, and yet we get to March every year and they crap the bed. It seems like every March, you know. So that's and that's your kind of flagship program right now. Is a team that has a reputation now of not getting the job done come March. Wisconsin's been solid. They're, I think, this year as good as they've been in a long time this season. Illinois is better now than maybe it was during that era with Michigan and Michigan State and Ohio State. Like Illinois was a little bit down back then, but they've kind of risen up. But the rest of it, it's a lot of mid, to use the common vernacular these days. It's more mid than it's been in a long time, and so that doesn't help you when it comes to your tournament resume. I remember, again, 4, 5, 6 years ago, where the Big Ten was getting 8, 9 teams into the tournament every year, and in recent projections, that's down to 6. So that's part of this as well.
Yeah, and even then, I think MSU, regardless of the Big Ten being mid, is still getting the benefit of the doubt because they are MSU, and they are one of the premier programs in the country, and they do still have that. Izzo still has that tournament streak alive, which is part of the reason that's helping their resume,
Sure.
whether people want to admit it or not. So I think that's another factor into that, because if this is whoever, if this is Northwestern and they're 14-9 and their one win is against Baylor, and they're this Big Ten kind of day and age, they're probably a little bit more on the bubble than MSU is right now.
For sure. Well, kind of a somber note to end the show on, but that's kind of all I've got. We'll be back next week. Michigan State again plays Illinois on Saturday at home. Man, it feels like a big game. It definitely feels like a big game. If Michigan State is able to win that game, it takes a lot of the angst out of the atmosphere, because it's another signature win on their resume. It's a ranked opponent, and so again, that would take a lot of the anxiousness out of the what's going on right now. And then Michigan State plays on Wednesday, so we might have to switch up our podcast schedule a little bit next week. Maybe we'll do Thursday if that works next week. I like to have a couple of games to react to, just because there's so many basketball games. It's not like football season where we're reacting to each game. So maybe we'll do a Thursday show next week and react to see what happens over these next two, unless something happens in this Illinois game that we feel like we need to address right away. Maybe we'll have a Monday or Tuesday show. So bear with us, and we'll let you guys know when we'll be back. Appreciate it as always, and we'll see you next time.